Welcome to AKS Daily News Analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated 7th March 2020 of Hyderabad edition. The first article taken up for discussion is from the page number 1. The article here is talking about, as part of the RBI bailout, it is the SBI Bank which is going to pick up the 49% stake in the Yes Bank, right? So how exactly this Yes Bank crisis has started and what led the mechanism that the present government and the RBI is following is been discussed in the next article. So here we'll just see few facts which are required here so that you will understand the topic in much depth in the next article, right? So now, because of such type of crisis, the government has come up with the draft for the reconstruction scheme, and this reconstruction scheme, it is not only going to protect the jobs for an year, but also it has established a new board members for the Yes Bank, right? So because there is a constant demand by the people for the money from the Yes Bank, right, as because it was a liability on the Yes Bank. So this Yes Bank, now because it is facing this liquidity crunch, the government has asked the SBI, which was earlier itself was considering in order to take up the stake in the Yes Bank. So now it has brought this SBI in order to buy the 49% stakes in the Yes Bank. So now this Yes Bank needs around 5,000 crore in order to come out of this liquidity crunch. So now they are going to sell this 24,000 crore equity shares. So because each share will have a face value of 2 rupees and they are not intending to sell the share not less than 10 rupees. So it is said that this SBI is going to infuse around 4,500 or 8,000 crore in order to bring the Yes Bank from the liquidity crunch, right? So not only that, this SBI who is going to buy the stakes in the Yes Bank of around 49%. So for 3 years, it will not be able to reduce its stake less than 26%, right? So talking about, because this bank is going to be taken over by the SBI, so obviously there will be a lot of fear among the people about the employees who have been working with the Yes Bank. So it says that for 1 year at least the term and conditions for the employees will not be changed. But yet about the key managerial personnel that the board is going to talk about, right? So it is the government has put up a memorandum on the Yes Bank up till April 3rd following because of the deterioration in its financial conditions. So the next new board, they have constructed a new board for this purpose, as well as they have made a regulator about this board who will be appointed as an administrator, right? So this board will consist of 6 members, whereas one will be the MD and the CEO, and the next will be the non-executive directors, 2 members, and the non-executive chairman, whereas the 5th and 6th members will be the nominee directors of the SBI. And talking about the capital infusion that is going to take place in this Yes Bank under the Basel III framework shall stand written down permanently in full with effect from this appointed date from whenever these board members are being appointed. So although I am talking here just facts, just look over to the next slide where you will see whole of the information in particular and you can understand what exactly happened with Yes Bank. Next, the article here is again related to the economy. We have seen in the first page about the Yes Bank, the chaos that are happening in the Yes Bank. So the here article is trying to talk about what exactly happened with the Yes Bank and how from how and when this Yes Bank has turned into a big problem for us. First, let us look at how there came a such type of governance issue with this bank, right? Usually if we see, banks have two kind of things called as deposits and loans. It does two functions called as loans and deposits, right? So whatever the people go and deposit in the bank, because the bank needs to repay them back whenever they are asking, right? So deposits what you go and put in the bank becomes the liability of the bank, because they need to return it back to the people, right? As well as on these deposits they also need to give the interest rate to the people, whereas then bank takes your money and rotates that money in the form of loans, right? So on the loans, because it gets the interest rate and also it will also get back the principal amount that it has given in the loan, so this becomes the assets for a particular bank. Now coming to the situation of the Yes Bank, this Yes Bank also until 2004, it was, you have to see here, it is called as balancing thing, how much you receive. If you are receiving around 10 rupees in the deposits, you should keep some amount as a security, like maybe some 3 rupees, that is usually ensured by the RBI in the name of CRR, SLR and all, right? But yet the bank should keep certain amount as a time in the security, right? And it should give the loans maybe some 6 to 7 rupees, it should give the money in the loan, right? Then only we can feel that these present banks are working in a very healthy way, right? So if we see, although it started in 2004, this Yes Bank initially was focused on the liabilities. It was trying to increase its deposits, right? But after 2014, if you see, this Yes Bank started to grow its assets very very rapidly, right? So increasing of assets and decreasing of liabilities happened. That means that this Yes Bank was receiving only 8 rupees in the deposits, but yet it was giving the same 8 or sometimes even more than the deposits to the people. That means that this Yes Bank was started to grow its asset at a very rapid phase. So if we talk about the numbers in 2014, this bank's Yes Bank's loan book was around 55,633 crore, whereas the deposits were 74,192. That means that it is good, right? Deposits are more whereas loans are less. But straightforward coming to the second quarter of this financial year, here the loan book grew for around 2,24,505 crores at the end of the second quarter of the current financial year, right? So here it shows that the loan book was around 2,24,505, but yet the deposit book was 2,09,496. That is, which is less to the amount what they are receiving or giving in the loans. So in this way, this loan book was growing for a bank, right? So loan book should be actually less when compared to the deposits, but yet the only loan book was growing. And in this loans also, had they been given to the good people who will return the things in a very good time, this wouldn't have been a problem. Somehow they would have circulated the money. But yet whatever the loans they were giving to the non-performing assets. That means that they were giving these loans on something whom they were not even paying the interest rate properly, as well as the principal amount was becoming a very risk factor. That is how its ratings of this Yes Bank were also going very low below the in the ratings agency. So once this type of assets, if their rating agency is showing them in a very less kind of role, that means that this banks also sometimes take loan in order to adjust this deposits and loans, right? So such type of loans was also not available from the outside. That is how this Yes Bank has gone into the chaos. And but yet the tipping point here came when in the last year one of the officer or one of the directors of this bank has resigned, and Yes Bank was already facing challenges, especially in raising the capital markets, right? So because this bank could not actually bring the capital market, so the bank here experienced serious governance issues. And although RBI was with constant engagement with this bank in order to strengthen its balance sheet and liquidity, but yet the RBI could not get a reliable plan, and this reliable plan got never materialized. So in the meantime, the bank was finding regular outflow of liquidity, like people, because they were losing the faith in this present bank, they were continuously taking off their money from their deposits, and that is when this regular outflow of liquidity led to the chaos in this present bank. So this was because there was a liquidity crunch in this Yes Bank. It is the SBI which has come to take up this 49% of the stake. So the central bank has said that all the deposits and the liabilities of this present Yes Bank will continue in the same manner as it will be in the restructured bank, right? So all the deposits and the liabilities of the reconstructed bank, except as provided in the scheme and the rights, whereas the liabilities and obligations of the creditors will continue in the same manner and with the same terms and conditions, completely unaffected by the scheme which was proposed by the government. But yet this Tier 1 capital which is issued by the Yes Bank under this Basel III framework will stand written down permanently in full with effect from the appointed date. And this resolution, they are thinking of doing it within the 30 days given time in the outer limit. And this scheme will also take care of all the employees and the mandates that will continue with the same kind of remuneration as well as the service conditions at least for 1 year, right? But however, the board will have to have a freedom to discontinue the services of the key managerial persons. Next, the article here is talking about the recent Delhi riots and how the judiciary has failed along with the administration as well as the executive, right? So article here is saying making the environment conducive for justice, and in riot situations it requires an urgent action. Proactive interventions by the judiciary would have actually prevented a slide into the chaos, right? So right from the Delhi violence that has erupted, we have been seeing how the blame game is going on. Either they are blaming the administration or the present government of AAP or the BJP for not taking the impromptu actions required during that time, as well as they are also talking about the extrajudicious acts that were done by the police and they did not intervene at the right time. But the article here also tried to emphasize upon the houses of the justice who also did not actually take prompt action so that the chaos could have reduced, right? So it is like not only the executive and the administration, but also judiciary tried not to play its role in subduing the chaos that was happening in Delhi, right? So if we have rightly glance through what has happened in Delhi, it has actually killed more than 50 people. So now the governments are coming forward, where we have seen even Arvind Kejriwal talking about giving 1 crore compensation to the SHO and to the other people they are talking. And daily in the newspaper we are also seeing how much they have damaged the property, right? But compensation can be made to the property but not to the lives, not even the children who have got to see the traumatized kind of situations in through their eyesight, right? So for this, before we see whether it is wrong or not, is the justice or the injustice, or will this monetary compensation will be good enough in order to alleviate the pain of the people who were going through all that? If we keep all these questions aside, let's now talk about what the judiciary has done. Because now they have already established a commission in order to inquire about the Delhi riots, right? And now we are also seeing the blame game has begun. But yet we can itself conclude by saying that had the executive been responsible and had he taken a prompt action, many lives could have been saved and damage to the property could have been avoided, right? So this all it shows in crux, if we have to say, because of the bureaucratic ineptitude as well as the authoritarian government which was over there has led to such type of chaos in Delhi, and we have seen the death of 50 members. Now turning our heads towards what the judiciary would have done, right? So the law here entitles that every victim of the mass disaster or the ethnic violence should get the legal services, right, for the filing of case, or maybe they should also think about the compensation. So now under the law, Parliament has enacted a law called as Delhi Legal Services Authority, which was put into action in order to assist the victims that they have seen during this Delhi riots. But yet the author here who has visited this place is arguing, saying that this Delhi Legal Services Authority, although it has set up 5 help desks, but they were not of much appeal to them, right? They say that the annual report of this Delhi Legal Services Authority is going to highlight, but yet there will be a tremendous effort that needs to be put in order to benefit the victims who have not only lost their property but lives of their many dear ones. So in this kind of situation, the Delhi High Court has actually acted very swiftly. It has started to take up the cases. But the irony is that the next day itself, this same Delhi High Court has said that the environment is not conducive for the booking of the FRI, and it adjourned the cases to the next 6 weeks. So here the author says, if at all a victim of domestic violence or the sexual assault goes to the police station in order to lodge an FIR, and if the station officer says that the environment that the present Delhi government has said that it is not conducive, right, is not at all good, or it is kind of showing a very irony how the High Court of Delhi has reacted to it, right? So but yet the Supreme Court has requested the Delhi High Court in order to show the urgency in the hearing. But how many of these people who are the victims in this riots can actually afford to go to Supreme Court, right? So this registration of the FIR results in the investigation into the commission of the alleged offences. But yet if they are not even registering the FIR, how can this investigation also get into the place? And now when the time comes, the courts will not even go behind in asking the victims why did they delay in lodging the FIR, right? Sometimes they say that because they have delayed in lodging the FIR, that will actually adequately be explained, but they cannot explain the leading to the acquittal, right? So that is the importance that is given to the FIR. Perhaps the most feature of an investigation is the collection of evidence, and if this evidence is likely to be tampered with, or with the witness to the crime or sought to be influenced, so the accused person will not even be get arrested, right? Now turning our action only towards, if we have to talk about how the judiciary should have played an extreme important role, right? It could have actually prevented this situation to go into the chaos. Now you may argue by saying that what can court do? It does not have any money, like it can actually swing up, neither it has any power to actually subside the violence, right? But yet this courts, this judiciary have the moral authority and the public trust among the people. It is most trusted entity as well as confidence of the people, right? So once, because this judiciary is representing all these three that are required for a chaos to subside, but yet this judiciary, the most respected institution, cannot say that the environment is not correct, so it is not conducive for the FIRs. Had judiciary been very very strict during that time, and had it lived its values for all this, and it has taken a prompted action against the people who were doing these riots, maybe at least it would have given a moral guidance to the people. Now if we glance through the criminal justice, right, so recent events clearly say us that the police all over has completely mixed up with the freedom, mangled with the freedom of speech and the hate speeches, right? So the inflammatory sentences before even this riots as things happened, had police been very conscious about the hate speeches, or which was leading to the incitement of the communal riots, such type of riots, full-fledged riots wouldn't have taken place in Delhi itself. But yet irony, we see the hate speeches which were given by the many leaders is being kept behind, but the innocent or the poor people who were just involved in the grasp of the movement in the riots, they are being caught and kept into the jails. Even if these people were not even trying to do any kind of hate speeches or in contempt in any way, right? So here the author is talking about how Bruce Lee's famous statement says, "Broads do not hit back." So the question here is the blame game which is going to start, right? Especially now, if whatever the FIR they are trying to register, they do not have the names of the people who has caused harm to them. So it becomes a really long question before us. Will they really going to identify and book anybody, right? Or will they be punished? It because we see that our justice delivery system is being delayed for too much, where we have seen a case, it took around 35 years to find Sajjan Kumar guilty of the offences in 1984 riots, right? So will this system find and punish the guilty for the recent riots? But nobody in this long way are going to think about all this. So here the author is trying to emphasize, saying that his final thoughts is just to read the preamble of our constitution and appreciate four crucial words, that is justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. Had this all been good enough, then we wouldn't have seen a case like the Delhi riots. Next, the article here is talking about how the monetary policy can't combat the COVID-19 impact. Right from the past 2-3 days in the news articles, we have been continuously talking about how this COVID-19 has affected major global economies of the world. Right, so we have also seen how the Sensex of different countries has fallen in the recent past. This is mainly because of the supply chain which has got halted, and because there is no denying fact that most of the people's supply chain was somehow connected to the China, right? So the article here is arguing, saying that a rate cut as a measure which is usually taken by the central banks of different countries cannot actually bring about any kind of market reaction, although it may, as of today, it can boost the sentiments, right? So here if we are seeing most of the countries, given the central banks of Australia, Malaysia as well as US have already cut down their repo rates, right? And now the central banks of Japan, England and Europe are also thinking of cutting their repo rates, thinking that if at all there is a cut in the repo rate, that means that it will cut in the repo rate leads to the increase of the money in the hands of the people, right? So once there is a lot of money in the hands of people, they are expecting that these people will start demanding more. Once the demand is more, then there will also be a production, right? This is the main aim of the repo rate, right? But if in India, if we have to talk about the central bank, that is what is our RBI doing? Because almost all over the world, central banks are thinking that monetary policy will act as a defense against this virus. So when we talk about the RBI also, usually RBI's response is little different this time. It seems to be like they are in little confusion, or they are not able to come out with a proper solution. As we see, first of all, if we talk about the monetary policy of India, basically it depends on the monetary policy committee, right? So all the committee members should agree to it in order for the rate cuts. So that itself will be a little long-term process for India to take a sharp decision, as they unilaterally cannot adjust the rate, right? So now the MPC will have to meet and deliberate on the situation before they have to call for a rate cut. So, but is the rate cut the right response? If we have to think about or introspect, if rate cut is the only answer, then here we have to listen to the words which were given by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It has estimated that around 30 billion shrink in the global merchandise export, and it is only because of the impact of the virus, compared to the total world merchandise exports, which has shrunk to around 19.48 trillion. And this shrinkage, although it is appearing to be small, but maybe this is just the beginning of what we are going to see a lot more in the near future, right? The main reason why there is a shrinkage in all this kind of global merchandise, because of the disruption of the trade and the global supply chains, and especially China being the factory of the world, their clampdown in their country has already disrupted the supply chains of products that are actually ranging from a small cell phone to the bulk drugs and to other components, right? So the factory lines across the world could freeze as the supply chain is getting disrupted. Now again the answer is the monetary policy that all the countries are trying to pitch upon or to resort, is it going to actually address the problem of this supply chain? The answer may not be correct. It may be a blunt tool when we have to address about the supply side, right? So people here, because as I told you, once you start decreasing the repo rate, there will be a money within the people, so they may start demanding more. I think they can put the economy into the forefront, but due to the rate cut, the people wants to spend money, right? But where will they spend the money if the products are so scarce, or because they cannot even travel because public spaces, movie theaters, everything is being halted? People are asking not to go for any kind of mass gathering, right? In such situation, even if you're trying to increase the money in the hands of the people, they do not have an avenue in order to spend. We can say, on the whole, we can say like this rate cut will help to try to boost the sentiments, but that again will be a very not much reaction when we have to talk about the market reaction. Here we get to even see the example of a Swedish central bank's deputy governor, who has said that he was asking the logic of rate cut as a response to the coronavirus impact, saying that such type of expansionary monetary policy cannot improve the situation, right? So coming or talking about our central bank measures, it may actually, given the constraint it has, especially on the monetary policy committee where the consensus of all the members is needed, or maybe here because not all the people are really happy taking about the monetary policy kind of rate cut. So maybe the RBI will come up with again something called as Operation Twist, where we saw that the RBI was selling the long term bonds to the people and it was buying back the short term bonds, right? And also we have seen about the long term repo operations that the RBI was taking. So here we can think like our RBI may not directly resort to the rate cuts of the repo rate, but may think of the alternative options that are in its store, where it can try to boost the market demand, right? But yet the supply side again becomes a constraint from it. If we analyze seriously, this seems like it is a very challenging situation for our government, given we were not even when we were just trying to return to our growth rate. Already you know that India has been suffering with a very bad growth rate when compared to the last year or the estimation that were given by the different agencies, right? So now coming of the coronavirus has again put it into a very challenging situation. Because of this coronavirus, we are seeing almost our exports are decreasing. These exports constitute the 20% of the GDP, right? So the growth rate, because of the decrease of the exports, will actually come down. But there will be one kind of benefit for people because of the decreasing in the value of the oil imports. So in that way we can think like, because our exports are actually decreasing, then we are also not spending much money on the oil market. But yet another important issue that the RBI here is concerned is because of the federal cut that the US has pitched. So once it means that US has cut the federal cut in their country, that means that money is going to increase in the people. So these people, because they have ample amount of money, they may start resorting to some kind of market like India, and they may try to spend that money in the Indian markets as the hot money, right? We all know about the consequences of the hot money. It's like they bring so much of money into Indian market, they flood it. But once the federal cut or they start getting good amount of interest rate in their country, they suddenly take away all this money. So that kind of sudden kind of infusion and then withdrawal will actually lead to a lot of disturbances in the stable Indian economy, right? Not only that, now if we have to talk about the supply side, given are dependent on China, especially if we see, because we are dependent on China for the pharmaceuticals, electronics, as well as the automobiles. Although government here is pitching that it may think of another option in order to airlift the products, but still that cannot address all the requirements or the supply chain issues that are actually arising because of this COVID-19 crisis, right? So this COVID-19 crisis has only underlined in the red the lesson that the global corporation needs to learn now, right? Already there was a signal when we have seen such type of trade war between US and China. That time itself, how the supply chain has actually eroded or tried to handicap the market situation in the world, right? So now this novel coronavirus, although it is very challenging for India, but yet because people will be looking for the alternative supply chain markets, right? Because whenever such things happen, people have known their lesson. Such type of epidemic or any kind of trade happens, that is going to affect their supply chain. Now India can avail this as a best opportunity in order to increase their supply chain model and be an alternative option to the world. Next, the article here is talking about India has joined the Indian Ocean Commission as the observer, right? So here talking about the Indian Ocean Commission, this is an intergovernmental organization which was established in the year 1982 by the Mauritius, and this present Indian Ocean Commission was institutionalized under the Victoria Agreement in 1984 in the Seychelles, right? So there are 5 African Indian Ocean nations present in this Indian Ocean Commission, which includes Comoros, Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar and the Reunion. And not only that, it also has International Organization of Francophonia, that means the countries which speak French, and it also includes EU as well as Malta. Whereas China has joined this, both of these are observations, whereas China has also joined this in 2016, and now India has shown its urgency in order to become an observer status in the Indian Ocean Commission because of the influence that the China is showing in all these countries, and especially its importance is becoming more given the role that the India want to play in the Indian Ocean, right? Not to be left out, it has urged this Indian Ocean Commission last year in order to give them the observer status, and this year it has been granted the status of the observer. So we have already discussed about the 2 bills which were brought about by in the ordinance process, right? So if we see in the last class also, we have discussed about the Insolvency and the Bankruptcy Code Second Amendment Bill, right? This bill was actually introduced in the year 2016, but in 2019 also it came up with few kind of amendments. As well as we have talked about the Mines and Minerals Law Bill, right? So both the bills which were brought about in the ordinance have been passed by the government. And talking about the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, it will actually seek to protect the successful bidders of the insolvent company from the risk of criminal proceedings for the offences which were committed by the previous promoter of the company's concern. Next, this Mines and Minerals Law, earlier it was a rule that whatever if at all a company is acquiring any kind of stake in the mines, then it is issued to those person who has an end effect that they should use only for this particular purpose, right? So now they have removed the end-use restrictions for the participating coal mine auctions, so that it will open up the coal sector fully for the commercial mining for the all domestic and as well as for the global companies. So we have been discussing about the COVID-19 from the past many days, right? So here the WHO has again given a warning saying to all the countries that containment of this virus should become the highest priority for all the countries, given the way it is affecting the economies as well as the health of each and every person, and it has affected more than 70 countries as of today, and the cases have also gone up till the 1 lakh. So this epidemic has become a global issue. So that is why the WHO is asking that every government or every country's priority should be now turning towards in order to contain this coronavirus. And And this is also amid the fears that such type of outbreak is becoming similar in the Iran also, as we have seen similar cases in China and South Korea. Although they have quickly uncovered more cases as they began to do active disease surveillance, right? So it is much better that we understand the extent of the problem so that we condemn the move towards more aggressively and targeted surveillance. And he also tried to break a myth by saying that, as even Trump has told, once the summer comes, this kind of the outbreak or the virus is going to get contained. But yet, because of its epidemic outbreak in especially tropical countries, has also put this faith in the chaos, and they feel that it is very false to hope that this virus will disappear in the summertime, like influenza virus which has happened earlier. But yet there is no evidence right now to suggest that this is going to happen anything related to the summer. So recently we have seen about the deal or the peace deal that was signed between the Afghanistan and the US, right? So even India has witnessed, it has gone to the Qatar or the Doha meet in order to witness this peace deal which was signed between these two countries. But yet this, if you see this present article, Pakistan is saying that it is against the security role of for India in the Afghanistan, right? So they are saying that the foreign minister of Pakistan is saying that India will play a game of spoiler if at all it is given any chance in the reconstruction of the peace process to the Afghanistan, right? That means that because we are already afraid that Afghans ground will be used by the terrorists of the Pakistan in order to operate against India, right? So that's why we are very, very skeptical, because the other half part of the Afghan deal, that Taliban actually it is supported by the Pakistan, right? So we constantly have a fear that the grounds of Afghanistan, once there will be a withdrawal of the US forces, will be used by the terrorists in order to attack India. And not only that, India has already invested enough money in the Afghanistan, around $2 trillion for the development of Afghanistan, so that we help in the building process of this Afghanistan. But yet the Pakistan, which is now the ally of the Taliban, is saying that they do not want India to join the forces in the peace deal of the Afghanistan, because it is going to play some role of spoiler. But the main intention of Pakistan is that it is afraid that Afghan people may be again turning towards India, and again this Pakistan may be isolated in the world, because already we have known about the FATF, in which Pakistan is in the Great List, right? So now if by supporting they wanted to garner many support from this Afghanistan and to keep away India. But earlier itself, India and China has planned for something called as 1+2 agreement, in which in the one here refers to the Afghanistan, whereas 2 refers to India and China. So these two together collaboratively wanted to play a role in the peace process of the Afghanistan. So next, the article here is talking about the assurance which is being given by the RBI, saying that it does have the enough forex reserve needed to secure our economy against the virus impact, right? In the previous article, we have seen how the coronavirus is impacting the world economy and how it may actually affect the India also, right? So here our RBI governor is saying that India does have enough forex reserve. Now let us understand how this mechanism of this forex reserve matter to us, right? So we are continuously seeing how our rupee is falling in the market, right? So if the rupee is falling down, that means that it is good for the imports, as we need not spend, it is good for the imports, right? But it is bad for the exports, because earlier, if at all, if you imagine you wanted to buy one Lakme product, right, for it was, you would get it for 10 rupees given in the Indian market. If you think now with the falling of this rupee, if it is happening, that means that imports, instead of, because the rupee is falling, that means that instead of buying the Lakme product for 10 rupees, here afterwards you can import the Lakme product for 8 rupees itself. So that is good for the importers. Now coming to the exporters, if he is exporting one tea bag for rupees 10 rupees, right? So now because the rupee is falling, here afterwards he has to export the particular product for 8 rupees. So that is bad for the exporters, right? So during this time when the rupee is falling so badly in the global economy, usually our saver, that is RBI, who maintains the enough forex reserve with him, intervenes in the market, right? Intervenes in the global market. So in the global market, that means that because that whenever there is anything which is more, its demand will actually, whenever the demand is less, its rupee will increase, but whenever the demand is more, the rupee will become down, right? So now it seems, because not many people are buying any of the products from the other countries because of the fear of the novel coronavirus, it seems like there is so much of rupee which is flooding in the global economy, right? So if there is so much of rupee which is flooding in the global economy, that means that our rupee is going to fall. For that purpose, the RBI now comes into the rescue. It will come here and from the global market, it will take away few rupee, right? It will take away the few rupee. In order to take away the few rupee, now this RBI, which actually maintains few of the forex reserve even in the dollars, it will give the dollars into the market and then bring out the rupee and try to reduce the rupee in the market. That is how it will ensure that the rupee is not falling in the global market. This is the intervention that the RBI must do. So that is why the governor here is saying that we have enough forex reserve. That means, example, if we take the RBI is having enough dollars in order to intervene in the market and to buy the rupee and bring them out so that the rupee is not falling, and ultimately it will benefit our exports, will not see any kind of loss.